Good morning. I am Kat Kabira, and this morning I would like to talk to you about love and compromise. Now, I would imagine that you could agree that we are in a place in our lives, personally and in this world, in a way that we didn't imagine. I would also imagine that if we got really honest and we look backwards, that's always been true. Maybe not at the extreme, but there's always been an element of surprise. And I don't know about you, but I know for myself, I started doing various spiritual practices, really getting on the path when I was 15 years old. And despite the lessons in surrender and the deaths and the loss and the awakenings, there has always been a little part of me that still is trying to beat the system and control and manipulate. And I don't want to give control and manipulation a bad rap. There is a time where that energy is quite important. But I'm especially speaking to you if you tend to be an overachiever or a perfectionist or just more of a doer, if that's your comfort zone. So that the idea of being, allowing, flowing, surrendering may sound great intellectually, but could be challenging in your own life and even feel threatening. And with the clients that I work with, I would say over the past, 20 years, one of the themes has always been, especially because I work with more empathic people who are people pleasers, and we're always working on how to honor and respect themselves in the process, not to make someone else matter more, how to have an equal weight in the field, both sides matter, how to not give ourselves away, how to not compromise ourselves. And, personally, I'll admit that compromise always was a word that I didn't like, because I always interpreted it as a giving up of oneself in a non-healthy way. So it's been really interesting 2020, 2021, where there's been a new level taken to compromise, what is healthy compromise? When is it compromise where you're not harming, destroying, giving up your essence? And there's a very big difference between essence and ego. When are you still respecting and honoring your essence, but there's going to be some twists and turns and surprises that make the other things not matter? And it does feel to me, because I do tend to tune into also what's happening collectively, so I don't know what resonates with you, that the distillation, the priorities, what matters is really where our focus is right now, and then allowing other things to burn away, which can be painful because there is a wrapping of identity and attachment to those things. But we really get to be more intimate with what actually matters. So I am curious with what's happening in your life. Are you having lots of surprises? The way I kind of frame my world these days is it's a bit of a circus. There's lots of surprises that I can't anticipate, that there's a part of me that gets nervous, anxious, fearful, that I want to actually try to control this circus, but it's a circus. There's surprises. And, how to create that support and authentic safety and comfort for that part of me that might be anxious or nervous or terrified, but also to be open to how to play in this new reality. And in terms of stretching ourselves into love, what if this is all a great love story? And what I mean by this, and if you've been reading my writing, which you may or may not have, I write about death and love all the time. It's my favorite topic. But what is that essence that births us, that takes us away, that creates mysteries, that connects us. I have friends and students all around the world that it's amazing to feel the connection that I have with them, even though I might not call them, where it's like it's a palpable presence that I can't deny. And back in the day, I was going to be a doctor, and the reason why I decided not to was, no offense to anyone who's a doctor, because you might have a different path and reason. We need lots of doctors here. I'm not knocking anything, but from my personal path, I really wanted to be in contact with the mystery and to know the mystery. And that means being really comfortable being in question as well, in being in a space outside of certain logic, and definitely being willing to strip away conditioning. So when we consider love, as much as I don't want to admit it, like I like to pretend that I might be wiser or more aware sometimes than I am, right? So if I get really real, in my system and in a lot of our systems, we still have the archaic memories and thoughts and patterns, we could say in our DNA, but somewhere where there's still almost like a 1950s and even older, a 19th century, 18th century way of considering what love is. And it's almost like we differentiate between love. And it's almost like there's that love that can happen in partnership. And already, in the past 5 decades, there's been a shifting of, what is gender and what is love and what is sexuality and what is pleasure and what's okay and what's not okay. And when does love matter, and when do we know that we're loved, and how do we know that we're loved? And the piece that sometimes can be missed is how love is constantly coming towards us, but often and not how we expect. So let's say we've got a conditioning of love exists between two people and it's this way. It shows itself this way sexually. Maybe there's marriage involved or more evolved ways of partnership, but there's still almost like this idea of a structure. And I'm not speaking about like just obliterating structure, but that how there could be a rigidity of how love needs to show up that we actually miss when someone is coming towards us with love and we don't even feel it. It could be because we ourselves are terrified. So I do work with a lot of people who have a history of abuse, and if you've been abused, at least I'll speak about the people I've worked with and myself included, there's going to be high suspicion. Like, I don't know if I want your love, because that love is going to come with some other things. Like, you're going to suddenly own me or expect things from me or manipulate me, or like you're going to hurt me later and it's going to confuse me because like you love me, but then you're doing this. So there can be that suspicion and kind of a shutdown, and there can be that safety zone of, well, my way of being loved is I'm just going to really be in my own space, and maybe I'll let animals in, but it's going to be an interesting dance with other humans, and I mean, with the little girls that I work, I mean, truly little girls, meaning like girls, teenager, preteen, and younger, we get to really talk about like, when are we still fed that Disney idea of being loved, that fairy tale love? And the women I work with in their 40s and 50s, where we talk about, there's still that little part of us. It's like, where's Prince Charming? So there's been this indoctrination of love, and almost like this little separate thing that there's like, and then there's that God love, that you get through religion, or you get through different philosophies or practices. But like, love is beyond these concepts. It's the thing that brought us here. It's the thing that will take us away. And it's this beautiful teacher underneath everything. So, this is a time when things are falling apart, and it's so easy to get lost in, and this is what's falling apart. This is what I've lost. There's places of regret. There's places of feeling victimized. And what if there's also that question of, how could I love myself more? One thing that I notice both in myself and in my clients, is that there's this unconscious and subtle way that we attack ourselves all the time. If you have a history of eating disorder, that would be like an expression of self-attack. A history of overeating, a history of purging, a history of over-exercising, a history where you're harming yourself. Or we can attack others, or we do both. And what's missing is that there's a part of us that's really insecure. And the last thing we need is to be like dug into and be shown like how awful we are. Like we're already doing that enough. It's like there needs to be this tenderness that's unconditional, where we can feel that lovability. And that is a great gift we can give one another. It's a great gift we can give ourselves, and it's a great gift we can give one another. How to turn towards ourselves with that unconditional love, how to turn towards someone else. And it's a good reminder, because we can be unconsciously and consciously, but unconsciously hurtful towards others. And usually that happens because we're in a lot of pain. So I'm not saying like excuse certain things, like boundaries are essential. Naming when you've been hurt is essential, but also realizing that, someone else, when they hurt us, like they're in a lot of pain too. So how can we be open to love even when she, he, they, it doesn't show up the way we want? I'm not saying compromise your essence. And that just brings it also another great question of like, what is your essence? How do you know your essence is running through you? How can you feel what it is? On an energetic level, when I'm looking at people's fields, sometimes I can see like, oh, like you've got your essence, and then you've got so-and-so's essence, and this essence. Like some of us can be quite sponge-like and almost take on like other people's energies, thoughts, postures, emotions, and forget and think that it's our own. So how do we really show up as ourselves? And I'm saying essence, not ego. And what is this new compromise that we're being asked, where there is going to be a sacrifice and an opening, but also we're not letting go of what's essential? I'm not going to give you the answer, because I think it's more of a question that you get to be with. And also there's an up-leveling of inner discernment of what are we saying yes to and what are we saying no to. And what still brings that level of light into our system. So I'm sending you lots of love from Bali. We've got this beautiful Bali bas relief in the background. And I will see you soon.